Great morning, Madam Chair. Bless you and thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your determination. Thank you for your brilliance. It is an honor to be your colleague, and I'm excited to do it for years and years and years to come. God bless you and thank you. I tell you, today, it is impossible not to be just completely overwhelmed with love and pride and joy after seeing the talent that lives and exists in this city. What we saw today through poetry, through song, through dance, through genius, reminds us just how powerful we are and just how much we've got to continue to contribute. CAD, I got to tell you, I'm just now trying to figure out how to book y'all for Annapolis. But that was truly, truly beautiful. So bless you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm also. It's always good to be back in Reginald Lewis and Terry. Just thank you for your just continued leadership of continuing to lift up and celebrate Black culture and continue to lift up our community and continue to lift up the contribution that this family has continued to make to us. We are all in awe of your leadership. Bless you and thank you. You know, it was said earlier that behind every good man, let's always remember the woman that carried them. And that's also literally and figuratively. I'm very, very, very clear. When I think about the shoulders that I stand on. That so many of the shoulders that I stand on, they are the shoulders of women. In my life, in my journey, and if people look and they see, they're like, they look also at our team, how many remarkable women that we have surrounding our team. But by the way, I want to acknowledge one of the co-chairs of our transition team, Shalonda Stokes. It's great to see you. You have a lot of Black women around you. I say, yeah, because I like women. But I also think it's important to be here this morning. That even when we think about the namesake of this museum, we also acknowledge the woman that carried him. And we celebrate the life of Carolyn Fugit, who we just lost a few days ago. And we say to her, Ashe and bless you, and safe travels and job well done. The job that she did as well. I'm thankful for the time to be here because not only are we around leaders who in so many different shapes and spheres, whether it's elected officials, and I don't see him here, but I know the mayor was here, and I say thank you, Mr. Mayor, for always lifting up our city, and also the other elected officials, Council President Mosby, great to see you, brother. Other members of the council, elected officials, university presidents, activists, business leaders. We got the whole gamut, of beauty right here in this room. I also know though that there's a person who I specifically want to acknowledge. And that's President Schmoke. So, those who don't know, I actually interned with President Schmoke when I was a teenager. True story. And my passion for this place and for this city is deep. Where I always say I wasn't a Baltimorean by birth, I was a Baltimorean by choice. And what brought me back to the city was an opportunity that was compounded upon tragedy. Where as a child, we moved around a lot. And when my mother was 14, when I was 14 years old, my mother got her first job that gave her benefits. First job that allowed her to work one job instead of multiple jobs. First job that gave her reliable hours. That job was at a place called the Annie E. Casey Foundation here in Baltimore. That's what brought me. And in here, I found a city that actually embraced me, flaws and all. I found a city that actually took me in. And I found a city that for the rest of my life, I'll always be proud to call home. And when I was a teenager, I got an opportunity that turned into an opportunity of a lifetime, and that was to intern in the office of, at that time, Mayor Kurt Schmoke. And Mayor Schmoke's not like a paparazzi camera kind of guy. Right? That's not how he rolls. And but the last day of my second internship with him, I'm in his office, and he's talking to me, and he says, "Hey, I want to tell you about." He said, "Have you ever heard of the Rhodes Scholarship?" And I said, "I've heard of it," because he was one. And he says, "I want you to apply for it." And it just so happened that was the last day of the internship. There was a photographer inside the office, and Mayor Schmoke brings me over to his wall, and he's pointing to his wall, and he's taken, and the photographer actually has a picture that now sits in my office in Annapolis, and it's a picture of Mayor Schmoke pointing to something on the wall. What he's pointing to is a picture of his Rhodes class and where he is in that, and that picture doesn't just placed on my wall in Annapolis. That picture sits right above the picture of my Rhodes class with me in it. The reason that I put those two pictures together is I'm very clear. Without that picture, you would not have that picture. And I'm thankful that Mayor Schmoke was able to see something in me before I could even see it in myself. And what he saw in me was an opportunity that ended up changing the entire trajectory of my life. And that's what I want to talk about today. Because there's a certain measure of intentionality that we have got to move. And a certain measure of purposefulness. I think about right before we were inaugurated. We were right here, Terry. We were right here the night before we were inaugurated. Everything about the inaugural process was intentional. And I wanted people to understand that. Where the night before we were inaugurated, we brought people from all over the state, some people all over the country, came in, and we had a celebration here at Reginald Lewis the night before inauguration. With a very clear intention as people were coming into the main hall where people were gathered together from different backgrounds, from different areas, different racial groups, that they had to walk through the exhibits in order to get to the main floor. Because we were intentional about wanting people to see our history and our journey before they came and celebrated. The morning of inauguration, before inauguration, we started the morning at the Annapolis docks. And we started with a wreath-laying ceremony at the Annapolis docks, where we were blessed by a spoken word poem by Lady Breon, and blessed with a remembrance by Sherilyn Eiffel. And we wanted to start down at the Annapolis docks because it was important for me that people understood that those docks was one of the first and largest slave ports in this country's history. And after we had the wreath laying, we marched from the docks to the State House. The same State House that was built by the hands of enslaved people. And then at 12:05, we began the ceremony where I became sworn in as the 63rd governor of this state. Intentional and unapologetic. And at times when we talk about things like Black History Month, and we will spend an appropriate amount of time, an appropriate amount of energy, an appropriate amount of focus on being able to spend time to celebrate the path that was taken for us to get here, the journey that was taken, the heroes who sacrificed everything in order for us to have a different and a unique and a better type of opportunity than the ones that they saw. And that's important. But what's also important is that when we're having that conversation about Black History Month, that the conversation does not stop there. That Black History Month is not just a celebration of what came before us, but it's a commitment and an affirmation about what we are going to do to make sure that Black history is not just today, but Black history is tomorrow, and we are providing the opportunities for people to continue to provide Black history for years to come. That's right. How are we using this time and this moment to be intentional about what it means to lead in adversity and take the greatest lessons learned from those who came before us and not just benefit from their sacrifice. That the greatest lessons learned is that the work still continues and the investments are still necessary and the intentionality still must be present. And so that's why this is a time to make sure that we are celebrating the names of Douglas and Tubman and Blake and Holiday and Marshall and all those people who came before us. And it's the opportunity to make sure that we are creating pathways for new names to be forged. And that's why if you look at the measures of intentionality that we have tried to move in, and that we move in partnership with many members here, both community leaders, city council members, state legislators, that this is our time to show that having and being able to focus on equity and excellence is not a binary conversation. We can and we will do both. That's why we can look at the fact that we have now built not just the most diverse and inclusive cabinet in the history of the state of Maryland, not to mention the fact it was very difficult to find anybody who looked like any of us inside of a cabinet of historical administrations. Right now, over 30% of our cabinet is black in the Moore-Miller administration. Appointments that were pulled together, led by the way by our remarkable Secretary of Appointments, Tisha Edwards. Well, by the way, I'm sorry, Baltimore, I had to take her to Annapolis. She's doing God's work. But if you look at the work that's being done right now in the department, where historically, around 40% of all Greenback appointments are women. In the first batch of appointments that this administration has made, 57% of appointments are women. Historically, about 16% are women of color. In this year's batch, 28% of the appointments are women of color that we have on this team. If you look at the fact that when people say we have to invest in our public education system, our answer is we agree, and that's why we have made the largest investment in public education in the history of the state of Maryland of any administration that has ever sat inside of Annapolis. To include a $500 million going towards Blueprint of Education to make sure that every single student a $112 million investment, the largest investment ever made by any administration in the Equal Opportunity Scholarship Fund, the largest scholarship fund that we have in the state of Maryland, providing opportunities for low-income students to advance in education and higher education. To include the fact that we made a historic $1.4 billion investment in mental and behavioral health, because if we're not also dealing with the behavioral and the mental health of our children and those who are supporting them, then we are completely missing the point. Yes. To include the fact that we have made investments and made the North Star for our administration work, wages, and wealth. And we are very clear, this is not just about a job. If we are not talking about creating pathways for long-term economic growth, if we're not addressing the fact that the state of Maryland right now has an 8-to-1 racial wealth gap, and that is not because one group is working 8 times harder, then I don't know what we're talking about. And it's why we're excited about working in partnership with many members of the legislature here to ensure that we are going to get things done, like the Family Prosperity Act, which has enhanced and makes permanent the earned income tax credits for working parents, and also making permanent the child tax credit, which has been proven to be one of the best poverty-fighting tools that we have in this country, and Maryland is going to be one of the first states that makes it permanent. To include the fact that while I appreciate the work of the legislature in order to get the $15 minimum wage done in 2025, that's not fast enough. We will get it done this year. I want it done this year. And we are going to base it, and we're going to base it on inflation, because gone should be the days when we have people who are working jobs, in some cases multiple jobs, and still living at or below a poverty line. And we're going to focus on ownership. We're going to focus on ownership. Home ownership, business ownership, and it is why one of the first executive orders that I made was ordering all of my departments, all of my agencies, to make sure that I need to know, where are you in terms of your MBE goals? Why are you not hitting them? And you have 60 days to present to me a plan as to how you're going to hit that 29% goal saved by the intentionality. Unabashed focus on understanding and respecting and admiring those who built those steps that we are standing on, but understanding they did not just leave progress. They left tools and instructions. And our job is to complete this task. Our job is to keep building. Our job is to stay focused. Our job is to stay together. Because if we do that, and we do not let moments pass or events fade, then we have a unique opportunity to show not just the world, but to show our children that we truly understand the assignment, and we truly understand what Black history, what the truest lessons of Black History Month actually are. And I'm thankful for the fact, and I tell people, and sometimes it's interesting, people looked at some of the things we did during inauguration, they said, well, he's focused on indoctrination. So now I'm focused on history. Now he's focused on social, on social wars, or whatever the thing they're talking about. Now I'm focused on progress. Focusing on understanding that I appreciate the fact, and it is true that I'm very humbled and very thankful for the fact that I'm the first African American governor in the history of the state of Maryland, and only third in this country. But I also know that that's not the assignment. Right. That's not the job. That in this moment we have a chance to actually keep building. That what happened a month ago was not the victory. What happened a month ago was the opportunity. That's right. The opportunity to invest, the opportunity to make sure that we are seeing institutions like our remarkable HBCUs, and thankful to our HBCU presidents who are here right now. We've got 4 of the top HBCUs in America here in the state of Maryland. Our future is being built on these campuses right now, and it's part of the reason why I'm proud of the fact that just in our proposed budget that we've allocated a record $421 million investment to Maryland's HBCUs. But knowing that in this time and in this moment, our job is to continue marching forward. Our job is to continue building. Our job is to continue believing. And as long as we've got the baton in our hands, our job is to keep marching. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on until victory is won. God bless you all. Thank you.